Hey everybody, so I have a special guest on my show. He's Fraser, and I've interviewed him on my other channel about him being in INTP. Definitely worth checking it out. I have a link to that down below and also up above too. But Fraser is going to share with us, probably if you're a creative person, you've experienced a lot of creative frustration and it's hard to get started. It's hard to get motivated. And Fraser has a way to be able to overcome that. And he has been able to demonstrate his creative skills. He's going to share you more about like his creative work as well. Thank you so much for being on the show, Fraser.
Thanks for having me, Leon.
So can you tell us about like that sense of creative frustration or lack of motivation in being creative? Why do creative people face that?
There are various reasons. Some of it can be kind of conditioning from growing up, like being told that, you can't make money as an artist or you need to do something more realistic. And it can also be sometimes like a traumatic element, like maybe something that you created or shared wasn't received well, and that was difficult for you and you don't want to repeat that. So that can be an element for some people. If you're kind of your way of navigating life in general and just getting through your day is not optimized, then it can be difficult to just keep up with everything to where you have the energy left and time left to be creative.
Yeah. So there may be a lot of limiting beliefs that people carry within themselves coming from society or from themselves. And people they can have a lot of things to be able to manage in their life. So being able to find that space for creativity could be challenging. So you've told me about like your story about like having lack of motivation, but you've overcome that. Can you share with us your story?
Let me try to keep this relatively brief. So I got into DJing and producing music in school, and I realized that that was a passion of mine and something I wanted to pursue further. But I went to school for engineering, thinking that was like a responsible choice, that I was good at math. But it turned out that I wasn't really aligned with that. Like doing math just all day, every day was not for me. So I got sick of that. I had trouble focusing on schoolwork. So I ended up dropping out of school and went back home and was just in a place of having to figure out what I was going to do. And I knew that I wanted to pursue music, but at that time, my health was going downhill and I just didn't have the energy or like mental clarity to be able to really pursue that. So I just decided to start addressing that, start getting healthier and learning how to improve, particularly my brain health and focus and energy.
What were you able to do?
So many things. So I started off with a focus on diet and started to see some improvement there with my energy and everything. And so I got into health coaching for a little bit and just helping people get on top of their diet and healthy practices. And as I made more progress with myself and expanded out into other beyond diet, into things like meditation, yoga, movement, things like circadian biology, and I just kept working on myself and making progress to where I began to have the energy more consistently to be able to start exploring different jobs and careers, and eventually to start really pursuing my music projects, which, as you mentioned, the one-man band thing, I had kind of a dream of being able to create music in the moment. And I developed a setup that allowed me to do that. And it was mostly like techno music that I've done since then, kind of other styles as well.
Right. Well, it sounds like you came a really long way because, you got in touch with the thing that you really care about most, which is creativity, right? You were in a field where it was not your thing, and you kind of like built yourself up like brick by brick. I kind of sense you got into a healthier space, and it's really cool. You're able to do the things that you enjoy. I would like to hear more about like your project of the one man band and all the music that you're making now.
So it's basically I use synthesizers, drum machines, mixers, effects, and I just improvise. And it's a practice of kind of allowing myself to just let out whatever is kind of subconsciously in my emotional inner world.
Yeah.
is a way to just kind of get that out in a way that where I don't have to figure out, like, I don't have to put words to it. I can just kind of
Wonderful.
let it flow out.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so it's therapeutic for me, and it's also something that was able to start like doing gigs with and playing out for people and
Hmm.
starting to get fans, which is exciting.
Yeah. Well, that's a beautiful, inspiring thing that you've mentioned there. But I think, yeah, you're really putting yourself out there, and I think that's pretty cool. So, what kind of advice would you give people, like if a creative person's like feeling stuck and they're lacking motivation?
Well, I guess one piece is starting to be more conscious of what we're taking in, like from social media, because when we get such easy kind of dopamine fixes,
Hmm.
it can limit the motivation we have for larger projects or larger
Right.
undertakings.
Hmm.
And then another side is just kind of giving yourself a moment, maybe a meditation or just a time to yourself to actually think about what is your dream that you're going for. What is it that you really want to achieve or do,
Hmm.
and connecting to that.
Right. So kind of like being able to like focus your energy because our energy get lost in all the social media stuff, like kind of like just dispersed or and like kind of like setting limits around that and refocusing yourself on your sense of purpose. What's a mindset you find to be helpful in order to be able to cultivate sense of creativity and motivation?
Personally, I try to be creative in almost every little thing that I do.
Hmm.
So even if it's a chore, it's like, oh, okay, how can I do this in a way that's either more efficient or more fun, or maybe I'll like make a video while I'm doing it or something like that. And so I think you can find a lot of ways to bring creativity into your daily life, even if it's not maybe the project that you're thinking about.
Hmm.
And then the mindset of growth. I mean, the mindset of growth is important,
Hmm.
obviously.
Right.
That's to be, to express oneself to greater degrees. It requires kind of opening up and sometimes facing our blocks and challenges
Hmm.
and pushing through those. And that's what growth is about. So growth, being on a growth mindset, I think helps feed into the creative process as well.
Yeah, kind of being able to see obstacles as opportunities to
Mm-hmm.
be able to like challenge ourselves to expand ourselves. I there's this other thing about mindset that you were talking about. Well, there's this thing about like in terms of you talk about chores and kind of like doing a video on that. Can you elaborate more on that?
Here's a funny little example. So I was vacuuming my rug in my room, and I decided to like lift the bed up and like vacuum under the bed, like while I was holding the bed up.
Hmm.
And I was just like, oh, that's kind of funny way to do it. Maybe I should just take a little video of me doing that and like
Hmm.
maybe use that for something like part of a larger video. So there are like projects that I like to just take little video clips and then.
I see. So you're like integrating into this larger project that you're working on, right? The main message is like you find like creative means to keep yourself entertained, but also to kind of like be able to bring this into some um, greater sense of purpose or something that you're working on.
Mhm.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, and then you
Yeah,
kind
and
of
it's also just a practice of kind of creating for the sake of creating, I guess. Like
hmm,
even if I don't end up using that clip, it's like it's practicing being creative and creating things.
yeah, it's just this thing as like part of like just the ongoing creative process that's
Yeah.
going on. So keep it entertaining, keeping it fun. Can you tell me about like environment and wellness habits that are helpful?
One of the big things for me that I have dealt with in varying degrees, and I had to realize how much it was affecting me, is clutter. So
Mm,
when I walk into a cluttered like room, it's just like a lot of information for me, and especially if it's things of my own that I have like maybe emotional associations with,
hmm.
and it's just like I take that all in at once, and it's like it's like I walk into the room and I was like, oh, what was I doing?
Yeah.
Like I just kind of forget what I was doing because I just took in all that information. It's like, whoa.
Hmm.
And so clutter is definitely a big thing to me, and creating a clear and organized space where you're not taking in so much extra information each time you go there.
Hmm. So you're talking about there's this theme of decluttering because you're talking about like decluttering in terms of physical space, but also like social media, the mind, right? There's different
Mm-hmm.
ways to kind of like refocus yourself. And I think like, you know, if you have good habits, you start to feel better. So like for me, like if I'm not having good habits, right, I just feel like exhausted a lot, and I don't even know why. It's like maybe there's something wrong with me, but actually like when you just like fix these things, things become
Mm-hmm.
much better.
Yeah, that's been a big part of my journey, is like figuring out
Mm.
what those habits that I need to be in place to like maintain my energy and stability.
Mhm. Okay. Can you tell us about your coaching program? So you have something coming up.
I have a 3-day challenge coming up
Hmm.
this coming Monday, and it's called a Creative Flow Breakthrough Challenge. So I'm going to take people through. Day one is going to be mindset, so some of the things that we talked about and more, just kind of going through different ways to think about things and approach things that can make things easier and promote progress and growth. And
Excellent.
then yeah, and then day two is going to be environment, where, for example, the clutter thing. I also talk about lighting, some other things we can do with our environment to really facilitate
Hmm.
the creative process or whatever we're trying to do in that space.
Hmm. Excellent. I'm going to put Fraser's information down below so you'll be able to find this coaching program that he has and also be able to find Fraser in general. If you want to be able to seek help with regards to something regarding your life, especially if you're someone who's creative and you feel like there's a block that you're facing. Fraser, thank you so much for this interview.
Sure. Thanks for having me.